Hello and welcome to Console Shock, retro and modern gaming chat with me, Trev and Stu from Playnation Games. Hello, Stu.
Hi there, Trev. How are you?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. You're back from your 10th holiday of the year?
My 10th? No. My second holiday.
Oh, sorry.
Holiday. I went to Las Vegas.
Nice. See, that's what you can do when you run a video game shop. All these glamorous trips away.
Yeah.
I should open up a CEX franchise. It'll be the same then, won't I? Better go on holiday all the time.
Stop mentioning the CEX, Trev, please.
It's kind of, you get tainted, don't you? Your store gets tainted with that. So yeah, you're back then, Stu. So did you get any games while you were away?
Do you know what I didn't? No, I did go into a GameStop and had a quick look around there. And
oh, you did?
Yeah. I don't
good?
Well, it's just the same as Game, very much so.
Literally identical.
Not identical. To be honest, the GameStop had more games in it, but there was nothing I was really sort of looking for at that point.
Like Super Nintendo or anything like Game Boy or Mega Drive.
In the one I went in I don't know, wherever I was near Las Vegas, and there wasn't any retro games in there at all. Because that's what I was. Actually, I was quite excited. I'll go over there and see if I can see any. Sometimes they're a little bit cheaper in the States, but no, there's no retro games.
So I just get me some Game Boy games.
Well, if there were some in there, Trev, I would have.
Mortal Kombat 3 for the Game Boy. I'm after at the moment. The game, it's a terrible game, but I just love getting every version of Mortal Kombat. It's just a weird, like, craving that I have. And it's just a never-ending battle. And it's quite expensive, actually, weirdly enough, to get it complete. You wouldn't get it complete in a GameStop, though. You'd be a loose cartridge of crap all over it and someone's name written on it in felt pen. You know, the kind that you accept in your shop, you know. You're like, how dare you?
I will accept it, but it'd be priced accordingly.
Well, that's and very cheaply as well.
Thank you.
There you go. The best deal in Croydon. So we're back again with another episode. Obviously, we had Steve Benway on last time, didn't we, Stu? That was fun, wasn't it?
That was it. Oh, yeah, nice guy.
Talked about his Amiga quite a lot that he's got stashed away in a corner of his basement thing that he works in.
He's a powerful beast.
Yeah, there's about 8% Amiga left in it, I think, isn't there, from the upgrades that he's done. Well, we've got another guest on today, and it's a very special guest. Do you check out Digital Foundry, Stu, on the old?
I do, yeah. I watch quite a lot of it. It's always good to see sort of the comparison videos of the PS4, the Xbox One, and then they show the PC version. Yeah. Now they got a bit of the PS4 Pro in there as well, so it's always good to see those. But I think sort of I want to say every Sunday or every other Sunday, or they tend to come out on Sundays, there's the DF Retro part, and that's, it seems sort of a little bit separate from everything else on there, but that's, to be honest with you, in my opinion, sort of the best thing about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's my favourite thing that they do on DF Retro. I mean, it's great to see how those old games were kind of cobbled together and how they pushed the limits of the PlayStation and the Saturn and the N64 and early FPS games on the PC, and even going back to like 16-bit and all that stuff. Well, we have John Linneman from Digital Foundry, produces the excellent DF Retro. So, hey, John, thanks for coming on.
Hey, guys. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank you.
No problem at all.
So, we're big fans of your work.
Appreciate it.
On Digital Foundry. So, bit of an obvious question that you probably get asked a lot, but how did you kind of get involved with Digital Foundry in the first place?
Yes. Well, when I moved to Europe, I quit my job doing IT related work. I did a lot of like programming and network admin stuff over there as well. And I was like, all right, so I moved here with my wife because her job brought her here, and I just applied to work with Digital Foundry. And of course, so, I got a reply back from Richard, and he kind of sent me a test, so to speak. Like, I think at the time it was actually figure out everything you can about Crysis 3, because I think that was the game coming out at that point. And so you basically had me
right.
do like sort of a mock article and more like just discuss everything I could see in there. Just
Like the tech sort of stuff.
Yeah,
tech
exactly.
dive, yeah.
Exactly. So I kind of did that. And he was like, all right, it's pretty good. Let's do something.
So what was it like meeting? So did you meet Rich then? 'Cause obviously to us, he's like the editor of some of the great 90s magazines.
Right.
Was that something you knew about? Or?
That was an interesting thing. So I didn't meet him right away. I met him, I guess, a few months later at Gamescom for the first time because, I was living in France at the time, now in Germany. Obviously, they're in the UK. So that's where we first met up. But I was familiar with his work. But, being from the States, those magazines didn't really have much of an impact over there for me.
No, so you had your own, I guess, like Game Fan and Electronic Gaming Monthly,
Exactly. It was that kind of stuff. So, when I came over here, I actually did check out all those magazines. And when I, visited his house for the first time, he actually has a massive collection of all those old magazines.
Oh, he hung on to them?
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, I think he got rid of a lot of them originally, and then he rebought them, like via eBay. Because he's like, oh, man, I got to get these back. And sure enough, he's got them all there. And I went through tons of issues and was just blown away by it. So
I've still got the first issue of Sega Saturn magazine, which I bought when it came out.
That's the mag. That's a good one.
He was the editor. Yeah, I got the VHS tape that it came with. I don't know if it's demagnetized. Now, I hope to God it hasn't. I think someone's uploaded it to YouTube. You can check it out. But I didn't have a Saturn for ages, because I was sort of a teenager. I couldn't spend £400 because that's how much it was here. So that tape absolutely destroyed it, just watching it over and over again. There was no internet. We could just quickly look up, hey, Daytona, let's check out what it looks like. There was the screenshots that Richard would have took with probably, I guess, some kind of rudimentary screen capture device.
Yeah, actually, from what I understand, what they used to do back then was like very carefully set up a camera and take photos of the TV, which was really difficult to do of a CRT, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And they spent a ton of time and effort just absolutely nailing that aspect of things so that they could get those pictures. And it looks pretty good.
We take it for granted now. I mean, my main gaming platform is the PC, and it's just now with Windows 10 you've got an overlay where you can. There was always GeForce Experience and stuff. You could take a screenshot super easy. So to make a magazine with that. Or an article on Eurogamer, it's just, I guess, I'm sure you use better tools than that, but
yeah.
You don't even think about it now, but the challenges then must have been insane. So that was your first. So you had to write about Crisis 3. So was it straight? You was like, great, you got it, the job, welcome to the team, or was it?
Well, it was kind of I started out mostly doing like freelancing in a way for them.
Yeah.
And, so I didn't actually do the Crisis 3 article because it was already in production. I just did my own take on it internally. But the first one I actually did, weirdly enough, was Puppeteer, the demo. You remember that game? Yeah.
I'm not sure, actually. Puppeteer.
That's a really cool game on PS3. It's like really,
it was some sort of platformer, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a platformer, exactly. It's really beautiful. So if you guys haven't played it, like definitely
check it out.
It's awesome. So I started with that, and then the second game I did was actually Zone of the Enders 2 HD collection.
Oh yeah.
And I kind of looked at what Hexadrive did to. They essentially rebuilt the game because it was so bad when it was released. They
made it how it should have been in the first place.
Exactly. Yeah, it was a lot better.
Yeah, I think I've got that actually. I think did it come with? There was a demo. Was it a demo disc came with Metal Gear Solid HD Collection or something, or was it another game it came with?
Well, you're probably thinking of the original version of Zone of the Enders on PlayStation 2, which came with Metal Gear Solid 2 demo.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
I think that's why a lot of people bought it.
Yep,
was to get that demo because I remember Zone of the Enders 2 when that comes in. That's quite a pricey little game, but to be honest with you, I didn't really think too much of it. I found the controls quite
I had problems with it.
Difficult. I think that's
it's complex. Yeah,
and
it's not something you can just dive in and have a quick 20-minute go if you've never played it before.
No, definitely not.
But it looks great. And I like mech-based stuff. But then you got something like Mech Warrior, which you did a recent digital DF retro thing. I've got the PlayStation version of that you have in that video. That's great. You just dive straight in and play, and it's got a lot of the stuff that's in the PC version. That's what it should be like,
Yeah, it was a cool take on MechWarrior 2. I agree.
So what was it like for you as an American coming to Europe, where there's this parallel universe of Sega was the dominant 8-bit system, and everybody loves the Amiga? What else? Like, what are you guys?
It's pretty cool for me, actually, just to see the different side of the coin. Because you're right, the NES was huge in the US.
Yeah.
And like, I think the episode I did on Blaster Master really opened my eyes to the situation, because that's probably the worst performing DF Retro I've done yet.
Oh, really? Because it's NES, it's NES based.
As I realized, like, Americans love Blaster Master. That's like a very, very popular game for us from back in the day. But then, like, I talked to most of the guys at Eurogamer. I was like, yeah, you guys know Blaster Master. And, like, the only one that knows and loves Blaster Master is Martin Robinson, of course, because he knows what he's doing. But the other guys are like, I never even heard of it.
They were playing Dynamite Ducks. And,
that's a good game.
Everyone got that on the Master System. I think we were like the government issued it to everybody.
I had that, an Enduro Racer.
Oh yeah, and the sort of 3D, and everyone has the 3D Outrun. No one has regular
3D Outrun.
That, and also I'm trying to get a copy of it. Alex Kidd in Miracle World, but a separate copy.
Oh, that's hard to find. Yeah,
built in it. Yeah, it was built into all of our Master Systems. So
that's right.
Yeah, because for you, I think the Master System ended with Sonic 1.
Yeah, after that it was dead, and it was right onto the Sega Genesis. So for us, obviously, getting copies of Sonic the Hedgehog 1 or 2 without the not for resale sticker is kind of the one you want to look for, because they came packed in with the system famously.
I guess you guys must go crazy on eBay UK buying up all the weird Master System. Well, to you probably a bit weird, like Mortal Kombat on the Master System. I'm buying that.
It's so weird. I know. I love it.
Rage 2. I'm getting that.
Yeah, Streets of Rage as well. That was another one.
It's good on Master System, actually.
You got 1 and 2. They made Streets of Rage 2. 2 isn't as good. 2 isn't as good though.
No.
We got like I played the other day. I played WWF Steel Cage Challenge on the Master System. It's literally the NES version, but with a few more colors. So it's crap. But
see, the thing for me that was shocking was experiencing 50 hertz PAL gaming for the first time.
Oh, that must have been soul destroying.
It was something. I mean, I think after a while, companies started to convert reasonably well. But like, you go back to some of the older examples, like the one that blows my mind, I just can't get over, is the original Sonic the Hedgehog on the Mega Drive.
Best example, worst example, but yeah.
The music is slow, the game is slow, and that's how people knew it. Like, I recently showed it to somebody that grew up with it here. They're a German guy. They had never seen it running at 60 hertz.
It's funny, actually, because obviously I grew up on that version.
Right.
So I was used to that. But then when it got to the late 90s and you had like Genesis.
Yeah, of course.
Those, like the emulators started coming in, I started playing the emulated version, and then at first I was like, wow, this is really fast and kind of weird sounding. But that then eventually, over the years, became my default version. And it's funny because I got an EverDrive for my Sega. Stu's going to take the mic now because I'm going to mention my Sega Multi Mega again, or the CDX.
Nice.
Yeah, they're amazing. And then I was like, great, I'm going to get Sonic going. And sure enough, it was it's not modded, my multi-meter. Right. So it's just pure 50 hertz. And it was the slowed down, plain vanilla version. And I couldn't play it. I had to break out an emulator just to play it. But I think the Sonic 2 was fine. And I think the other ones after that, optimized. But yeah.
I mean, from my point of view, it seemed... The Wii got the slower games, but then we got the sort of the better cables, if that makes sense. We had the RGB,
correct. So
we had a much clearer picture. But
that's how I run everything.
A lot slower.
No, but you're right, exactly. Back in the day, in the US, nobody knew any better. I mean, we were stuck with mostly, at best, it was composite video, but most people I knew, including myself, were all like mostly RF.
Yeah.
And picture quality was awful.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I never had an RGB. When I was younger and I had all these systems, okay, they might have had RGB cables out there, but I never had one. I had an old TV and I just put an RF lead in, and I was happy with that. But sort of now, I wouldn't sort of dare have.
Yeah, it's the default now. I mean, I think the first
RGB on everything.
the first console I had I got a SCART lead with was the Sega Saturn.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and it came with it. It was the second one with the round buttons.
Wait, really? It came with a SCART cable?
Yeah, it came with a SCART. It's awesome. An RGB SCART cable, and it's weird because then I got the Dreamcast came out and I got that, and that came with an RF cable.
Oh,
so I don't know what happened there. So it was like, I was back to terrible looking, signal. But yeah, then I'd already got used to the idea that SCART cables were the way to go, and I bought one later on. But yeah, I mean, I found out the other day for the first time that in France, the NES came with a SCART cable.
Oh, so yeah, when I was living in France, actually, I got a great deal on a complete in-box NES or NES.
Oh, wow.
Because I went to a shop and it was like a secondhand shop, and the guy's like, it doesn't work. I'll give it to you for €5. And of course, you know those systems, right? You put the cartridge in, hit power, and half the time it's not going to work right away, right?
Yeah.
That's just how the system is.
Yeah.
So that's what he did. He tested it, didn't work, so he sold it to me for €5. And yes, it has some kind of weird. It's similar to the multi-AV out you see on the Super NES and the N64, but it's smaller than that.
It hasn't got the notch, is it? That little.
No,
notch?
It doesn't have the notch, and it's actually misleading because yes, it is a SCART cable, and yes, the label on the back of the system says RGB output.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's just feeding a composite video signal through the cable, so it's it's just composite.
Yeah, I got really excited and I started researching it, and there was some article that I read on some like fan on NES. It was just the composite. It was like, oh no, I got my hopes up, but I think it doesn't produce natively like an RGB signal, so you have to kind of mod it. It's kind of in there. You got to mod it to get it out, I think.
Oh yeah, I mean you can. Yeah. I haven't modded those since I got the analog NT mini and regular NT in here.
Is that what you use? Yeah.
Yeah, I use the NT mini on my PVM just because just straight RGB analog output looks awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't have to mess around with any mod stuff on there. It's just, but yeah, you can totally mod those NESs, no problem.
Have you attempted to get like a Frame Meister or any of that real heavy duty?
Yes. In fact, I have 2 Frame Meisters and an OSSC here.
All right.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
That's what I used to make the retro series. So
do you use the repro sort of consoles or the sort of the clones? Is that what you use for when you just want a game on play a NES game? Or
no, you know what? Maybe later I'll share an image with my current setup, but I kind of keep maybe 14 retro consoles hooked up and more on the shelf. And I have like a large glass shelf with a Sony PVM CRT on it.
Oh, wow.
And it's all hooked up with a SCART switcher. So
is that like that's at home? Yeah, that's what you have at home.
Yeah, that's right here next to me, and I can just power that on and play anything on a real CRT, and it's just ready to go. And
that's the way it should be.
Now I got the analog NT Mini, I got a Super NES, American and Japanese Famicom. I got the Genesis 32X with the Sega CD.
I got the Tower of Doom.
Yep. Got a PC Engine Duo R. Got an Atari Jaguar 3DO.
That's awesome.
Multiple PlayStation 2s and.
So you just flick between
Dreamcast, Saturn, all the good stuff. It's all here.
Yeah. No, I've got like I have sort of a minimized version because I don't have like a man cave that I disappear into to get. I don't know anything wrong with that, but yeah, I've got like it's ridiculously simple. It's just an IKEA sort of square shaped unit.
Okay.
And inside the squares, I've just got a selection of consoles. I've got all the last gen. Because the great thing about them is they can all stand upright, so it takes very little room for those. And the other square, I've got a Switch and a Super Nintendo with an EverDrive in it.
Perfect.
With an RGB SCART coming out. Underneath that, I've got another shelf with a multi-mega, so it's the smallest Mega Drive with a.
Jealous of that. I don't have one of those.
Yeah, they're awesome. With the Mega CD built in, of course, I've got to take up a lot of room with that, and that's RGB SCART. And I've got a NES. A PAL NES in the lower left sort of square, and then the other one I've just got kind of I've got like a 3DO FZ10.
Oh, you get the 10, yeah. I have an FZ1, and I have to replace some capacitors on it, but yeah.
Yeah, I've got an FZ1 as well, but mine's all right. I heard like the drawer. The CD drawer is the thing that tends to go on.
I fixed all that. The CD drive works great, but the capacitors connected to the power supply are starting to leak and go bad. So I have to. And so like the sound gets fuzzy and it kind of freezes on video, and it's all related to those. I got to replace that. but the 10 is the one that seems to be the most reliable, from what I understand.
Yes, yeah, that's the top loader. So that's the one that I use as my main sort of 3DO, because it's an awesome system that's extremely underrated.
Yeah, it's a cool system. I like it.
Ton of games came out for it, which I didn't even realize until I researched it later on. But yeah,
it's going to be in the Soul Reaver video this weekend, actually. Quite a bit.
Cool.
Because 3DO, that's where Crystal Dynamics started, right?
Yeah,
they were the first publisher on there, and they put out like 6, 7, or 8 games or something on the 3DO. It's ridiculous.
Well, there's so many firsts on it. I mean, you've got the first 3D FIFA, which obviously for the UK.
Oh yeah, that was huge.
Which is good. It's actually better than there's the PlayStation FIFA 96 and the Saturn FIFA 96. They're terrible, and the 3DO one is really good. I think because it was EA's console, kind of. Well, it's triple.
Yeah, in a way, yeah.
So yeah, I guess they had a bit of they found that they learned their 3D kind of trade on that. So so that they're going to be able to produce a good version. But you had 3D Madden, you had Need for Speed, which that video was great, by the way, that you did.
Oh yeah, thanks. That was a cool one.
It's funny. I prefer the slower pace on the 3DO.
Yeah, that was the weird thing that I came to. It's like, yeah, the other versions do run better for sure, but the actual like gameplay experience, I actually prefer the 3DO one.
Yeah, I'd actually forgotten that the PlayStation version, which I played recently, was kind of regular sports racing speed.
It's super fast, yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of makes it a bit off-putting. And I went back to the 3DO version, and all the cheesy FMV stuff that they took out.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's another franchise that these days is like huge, and it started on the 3DO as well. So
Road Rash was big on 3DO.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's the best version, I think. Well, I think that converted a lot better, didn't it, on the other systems?
Yeah. The other ones, they kept it pretty much the same on the other systems rather than like speeding up the game. So that's, of course, there were some cool PC ports like Star Control 2. You had Wing Commander 3. Games like that showed up on the 3DO, and they were pretty decent.
Yeah, some of them got PS1 versions, like the two Mark Hamill Wing Commanders, as I refer to them as. They got PS1 versions. I've got that. I actually got both of those recently because they're really cheap. I searched for them on eBay thinking, these are going to be like weird, like quirky, sought after PS1 games. But no, they're like sort of £12. You'll get a decent copy. Good thing about those double clamshell cased ones, because you're probably used to the terrible PAL PlayStation boxes now.
Oh, I've seen a lot of those. I don't have too many PAL PlayStation games.
Yeah.
I prefer to stick with the NTSC. I usually actually import from Japan because it comes in clean without customs interfering, and the shipping's usually cheap. Yeah.
I actually bought a Japanese PlayStation game. I was a big fan of a PC game called TFX.
Oh yeah.
There's a PlayStation 1 version of that.
Really?
I
actually didn't know that.
Only in Japan. It's only in Japan. I know. I couldn't believe it. Because it's funny, because I was trying to set the PC version up on my current PC. You need DOSBox, and it's a bit fiddly because it was designed for a flight stick and all that kind of stuff. And then I read, that you should just get the PS1 version. I was like, what? There's a PS1 version. It turns out they released it only in Japan. It's literally the arcade mode of the PC version of TFX. TFX is a flight sim for anybody that's listening doesn't know what it is. A very important flight sim in the history of flight sim sort of thing. Came out around 94 on the Amiga as well. Actually, no, it did come out. It was unreleased on the Amiga till a magazine released it. Strangely enough.
You know what you've done right now? You've just inspired me for a future episode.
Is there a TFX episode? Yeah, you should. You need to put the word out about that PS1 game, because it's not even a Wikipedia. On the Wikipedia article for TFX, it doesn't mention the PS1 version.
Yeah, I might have to sort of wrap that into maybe weird PC to console conversions that you didn't know about.
Yeah, well, there's no videos on it on YouTube. I should bloody do it, because we'll probably get a few hits, but. It's all in English, so you can not the manual, but the game itself is all in English, so you can play it. It's very import friendly.
Wow, I found one for sale, and it's the only one.
Super cheap. Yeah, I got it for like £5 or something, like with another £5 postage. Yeah, so there you go.
That's crazy. There's only one listing on eBay here.
Yeah, it's funny because obviously Japan doesn't really have eBay, does it? they use Yahoo auctions or something.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys on eBay selling from Japan, but
yeah, they set up an account.
Saying that, I'm looking on eBay now, and there's one guy, or it looks like almost the same advert, but in Germany, someone's selling it sort of 3 times.
VFX, yeah.
And then from Germany or from Japan, it's about £5. Where in from Germany, it's about £25. So
it's about a tenner that I got it for.
that's what they're going from Japan. But
we had a little chat, didn't we, Stu, about a few weeks ago about weird PS1 games that I'm going after. One is Final Match Tennis for the PS1. If you, John, you might know this from the PC Engine. Final Match Tennis is an awesome tennis game.
Sure.
There was a PS1 version released only in Europe and Japan.
Amazing.
It's really hard to track down the PS1 version, the European version. There's tons of the Japanese version. That's another one. There's a couple of weird football games like Namco Soccer, only come out in Europe and Japan.
Oh,
I
yeah.
managed to get a Prime Gold, it's called. I got a copy of that. That was paid a bit more than I probably should have done, but yeah. Well, there's another one that I got. I can't remember. The first Pro Evolution Soccer game, Goalstorm. Yeah, it's funny. Everyone associates sports games as being super cheap. No one cares about them, but no, there's a few. Well, Eurogamer did that great article on Lakers v Celtics.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that was cool.
That's kind of
did someone talking about Lakers versus Celtics? In the end, did the person actually pay for that?
Yeah.
Oh wow! Okay, good.
That's great.
£2,800, I think it went for.
I thought it was up to 8,000.
It went up to 8,000, but the guy who was selling it, he had to cancel a few bids. It basically on Retro Collect, which is a forum that I go on. You guys might be familiar with it. The guy that was selling it was on there. He was actually we were chatting to him on it, saying, "Hey, you might want to check the bids and just to make sure he gets the money." But yeah, the guy apparently came over and paid him. He went through the PayPal, I think, or a bank transfer while he was with him and made sure it all went through. And he was a big, full-on fan and collector. So it's funny because to you, John, it's kind of like, I guess, Little Samson, and those are the games that you would think of as the rare kind of console games. But like Lakers and Celtics is kind of our Little Samson. But it's even rarer than that, isn't it? But that was apparently 192 copies, according to that Eurogamer article. So,
well, I don't believe there's 192, and then only, I think they were saying 13 have appeared.
Yeah, it's difficult, though, isn't it? Because there probably was 192 in a warehouse at some point, but in the 20 years or more than 25 years since then.
You got to think about it with that whole Nintendo PlayStation thing, right? And the way that was discovered in that guy's attic.
Yeah.
It sat there for years and nobody even knew it was there or understood what it was, right? So I'd imagine that it's the same case here where there's just cartridges of it somewhere. And
someone sat on a pallet of 100 right now.
It's like if you just saw it and didn't know what it was, you probably wouldn't give it a second thought. Or it's just sitting in storage somewhere. It's like, I don't know.
Do you guys ever watch that show Elementary?
No.
Okay. Anyway, to cut a long story short, you had some guy on there who he was going on about this fictional computer game, and everyone was sort of trying to search it where it was buried, like E.T. was.
Yeah.
And everyone was going around on the internet trying to find where it was buried and all these myths of where it was. But actually, this guy on there, he found it years and years before. Then every sort of 3 months or 6 months, he would slowly release another one onto eBay.
He literally is like
for, $500 or whatever. But he actually had hundreds of them. But if he was going, if I release them all, they'll be worthless.
Bastard.
So he would just slowly, every now and again, go, look, someone's found another one.
Yeah.
And sell it for £1,000 or a huge amount of money.
We have there are some rare PAL NES games that you guys never got in America. There's one that people go crazy for. It's like God, this is terrible. I can't remember what it is. It's like a puzzle game. It's not Little Samson or Stadium Events or anything like that. It's something else.
The one that sticks out to me is Mr. Gimmick.
Oh, the one that came out in Sweden, didn't it, or something? Like, yeah.
Yeah, and really, the Japanese one is the one to own for that. That's just because of the sound chip.
Yeah, there's a load of those. Like Castlevania had that, didn't it? I think with the
I mean,
mapper.
I think it's the same. So the expansion port on the bottom of the NES.
Yeah,
that was like a pin from the slot that was available in the Famicom cartridge slot. And they basically used that to pump the extra audio chips through the system, so you get all the extra awesome sound hardware in there.
Oh, right.
And because it was basically moved to the bottom of the console, it was no longer available in the cartridge slot, so you couldn't actually include those enhanced audio capabilities in a NES game, only in Famicom titles.
To plug a giant thing into the bottom, like a bass unit, like a game.
Yeah, exactly. That's
sound enhancer.
That's ridiculous. Yeah. If you use like an EverDrive or something with a NES game, and you put like, one of those games with the audio chip, or even use the real cart on a NES, it won't play the sound properly.
Yeah. I mean, they sound amazing as well. It's like,
they do.
Like Master System games have an FM. Some games have the FM sound, enhanced sound as well. The SG 3000 games.
Are you guys familiar with Lagrange point?
I think I've heard of it.
I posted it I included it in the Super NES video I did recently, but that one stands out for me because it used Konami's VRC7. It's the only game in Japan to ship with the VRC7, and that actually it was on the regular NES, the NES.
Oh, right. Yeah,
and it has an actual FM synthesis chip built on, so it ends up sounding more like a Mega Drive game than a NES game.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, there's a bit of a debate on what actually sounds better. Does the Super Nintendo Ken Kutaragi, slightly muffled sounding but kind of more like real instruments chip, or the Mega Drive kind of like bleepy, but when you get it to sound good like Sonic games, it sounds amazing. I don't really know. There's sort of music on either that's.
Oh yeah, this is always a good discussion. I like them both, but I'm a real huge fan of what the Mega Drive could do. FM synthesis chip in there. You can really make it sing.
Well, my favorite would be the Amiga out of all the 16-bit, because the sound in that was absolutely phenomenal. The SNES could actually do. There's a couple of Amiga ports to the. Sorry, I'm calling it the SNES. I guess it's the Super NES to you, isn't it?
That doesn't matter. I called it the SNES in the video. So.
Oh, you've caught the bug. You're calling it the SNES. You've become everything you've ever hated.
Comments went crazy over that.
Oh, really?
You're never going to keep everyone happy, are you?
Nope.
No, it's the internet. Yeah, but I was playing Pinball Dreams, which is actually quite a famous Amiga game.
That's right.
There's actually a SNES version. I don't know I think it might have been just in the UK actually, but that had very, very good music on the Amiga, like amazing sounding music. I think because the people that built it was DICE that made that game.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so I think that they were from the demo scene. And that was where the Amiga demo scene, so they make amazing music. But when they ported it over to the Super Nintendo, it's actually very close to the original Amiga version. So I don't think you could have done that on the Mega Drive. It's got a very different sound.
Yeah, because I mean, the Mega Drive, what I like about it is that it's actual real FM synth. It's not really driven by samples or anything like that. Yeah. It's the hardware producing that sound. I mean, there is a PCM channel, which is used well in a lot of games, but most of it, it's just the FM synth, and I think that's what gives it a unique character, because it's analog hardware, like producing real sound, without any extra like external pre-recorded samples in there.
Yeah, I actually prefer. One of the famous Sega sort of music games is Outrun. I think I prefer the Mega Drive version of the soundtrack.
Sounds great.
To the arcade, yeah, it sounds really, really good. So yeah, if I ever play that, I want to hear this magical sound shower. I tend to use the Mega Drive version, even though I guess it is kind of inferior. But I don't know, something about it just sounds good to me. So screw everybody that prefers the arcade version. So, obviously, Digital Foundry. You've focused on comparing. I think how I got onto what you guys did was your comparisons of PS3 versus Xbox 360.
Yeah, that was the beginning.
Yeah, and you had like many rounds that went on. I did even end. I think you had like 30 odd rounds of comparing games.
Yeah, that's right. It was like a round-based thing.
And it was the first thing that sort of turned me on to. because I was just into I didn't really have a deep knowledge at that point of how the technology worked and and all that sort of stuff. And I always thought, because I was a PS3 sort of fanboy then, so I just thought it's got 7 cores in the CPU, therefore it's more powerful. All the games will look better. Then I started reading Digital Foundry, and I just kept seeing, the 360's version's better, the 360 version's better. Each of these games, I was like, oh my god, and some of them. Some of the PS3 versions were terrible.
That was a common issue with the PS3. Actually, the 360 hardware kind of trounced it in the end.
Yeah,
I mean, you could do some cool stuff with the PS3 for sure, but multi-platform games, just in terms of utilizing the hardware, it's like 360 was almost always the way to go.
Well, a lot of people sort of say as well, like, oh yeah, but if you get a dedicated PS3 game like Uncharted, the Xbox 360 gets absolutely destroyed. But then I've got the 360 version of Rise of the Tomb Raider. I actually have the PC version as the one I played, but I got the 360 one as well because I'm kind of weird like that. I like having different versions.
I agree, me too.
Yeah,
I love it.
And it looks freaking amazing.
I covered that too when it came out. It's absolutely incredible what they did on the 360 there. It's the same game.
Yeah. And like, okay, it's 720p, but even upscaled to 1080p, it looks great. And I think that might be better than like Uncharted 3, I guess, is the closest thing on the PS3.
Yeah, they're comparable, I'll say.
yeah. I guess it probably isn't, but well, Last of Us, I think, is probably like the ultimate PS3 sort of third-person adventure game, isn't it? Right at the end of its life, but yeah. And some of the stuff they were doing at the end of the three, when we talked about this, haven't we? That it wasn't really until probably 2015 that you started seeing a big.
Yeah, I remember when just before sort of the current gen systems came out, the PS4 and the Xbox One. I was sort of late sitting on the sofa playing Grand Theft Auto 5 and thinking, why am I pre-ordering the next generation of systems? I'm wasting my money. This game is, there's so much depth in it. The graphics are amazing.
When you compare 4 to 5, that looks like another generation already.
Yeah, I mean, I always think that the racing games, to be honest, they're very easy to make them look good. And if you even go back to like Gran Turismo 3 and 4, I never quite judged that as a real good way to see how good the graphics are on a system, if that makes sense. So I don't know.
Same with sports games as well, because they're only rendering a limited view of an environment.
Well, yeah, the sports games, they always seem to run perfectly. They always look really crisp. But you
got to go if you go back though to like the beginning of the PS3 generation, like Madden launched on the PS3 at 30 frames per second.
Yeah.
360 was 60 frames per second, and just that difference right there was like, ooh, there's something wrong here.
Pro Evo 2008 looked absolutely terrible in the PS3 as well. With like the frame rate tanked on replays.
Yeah,
and compared to the 360, it wasn't great on the PS3 either. On the Xbox either, you had to get the PC version and a good graphics card, which is odd to something you would need for a sports game. But but I think that crossover period has now ended. I think there is some 360 games coming out. I think there's no wrestler. Well, there's sports games. There's an NBA, 2K18, FIFA 17, and Pro Evo. But apart from Pro Evo, which actually is it does use the Fox engine on the Xbox as well, a cut down version of it. Because I actually did my own comparison. So I've got the Xbox One and the 360. I played both, and it's missing animations. Some goal celebrations on in there. Some effects it's missing. There's like a motion blur, which I don't think looks great anyway. In replays is missing, but the game is the same. The actual game.
I think they're just going down the route now of, they'll continue to bring out the Xbox 360 versions of the FIFAs and the Pro Evos, but it's almost for the third world market.
Well, I think you'll get next year. Will be
the Brazil, the Argentinas.
If it comes out next year, then they will have at least equaled the PlayStation 2, which had up for, like in the case of Madden, it had Madden NFL 12. So that was 12 years of Madden on the PS2.
That's insane, isn't it?
Yeah.
FIFA 14 was the last ever game. and that's like 2001 was the first game. Technically, it's 2000 if you count FIFA World Championship, which is a Japanese exclusive game. Yeah, it came out in before it the PS2 came out in the UK and America. But yeah, that's 14 years. So I think next year will be the last year of PS3 and Xbox, and then we'll be pure. Although in saying that, I don't know. We're not going to have generations really anymore, are we? Now we've got the Xbox One X, and
we'll see. It sounds like Sony still wants to take that approach, but it's not entirely clear what they can do. For a next generation, just because of the way hardware is going.
What are your thoughts on the Xbox One X? It seems like it's a bit of they've kind of lied a little bit or exaggerated on the...
No. I know why people think that. I can see that, but really, no. They've been pretty upfront about it from the beginning. I mean, if you know what the hardware is, it makes perfect sense. They're not going to mandate, for instance, that every game is native 4K, right? That would be absolutely silly because it would limit what you could do. But I think using techniques like, the different rendering methods, like checkerboarding, for instance, that's not a bad thing. It looks great, and it lets you squeeze a lot of performance out without too much of a loss.
Do you think that might take over from actual natively rendering, like every pixel, like checkerboarding just be the default way because it looks nearly as good? And
I'm not sure it'll necessarily take over per se, but I do think it works really well in a lot of cases. And most people, because with a 4K TV, the pixel density is so high, and when you're just sitting from a normal view distance, it's really difficult to actually visibly pick up a difference between the two, right?
Yeah.
So it almost doesn't make that much sense to do native 4K, even though it does look awesome. It's not as much. It takes so much more hardware to get there that it's not necessarily worth it.
Well, I think you guys highlighted it's just kind of edges, and when you do fast sort of pans around and stuff like that, you might pick something up if you just stare at the screen.
It's usually like edges of things like foliage and trees, and if you look closely at like really complex, like single pixel width objects, you can kind of catch some of the glitches in it.
Yeah.
But in general, it just looks really, really sharp, and most people, I suspect, wouldn't be able to tell the difference between a checkerboard and a native 4K game.
Are you going to get one?
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Stu?
Yeah, definitely. I've registered my interest with Amazon, so as soon as that becomes available, I'll grab one. But talking sort of about sort of the Digital Foundry videos, and quite often is, I was very sort of pro the PS4, and that had the sort of a little bit more power, few more teraflops in there, or half a teraflop better. And I was kind of, no, well, I'm not going to get a Xbox One because it's not quite as good, not as many sort of polygons are thrown around the screen and all of this. But I've actually, I kind of like, I've got an Xbox One now, and I'm kind of enjoying that a little bit more. Is that sort of, I don't know, I've almost sort of turned from a sort of a PlayStation fanboy into a sort of, back to what I was, sort of an Xbox sort of fanboy, if anything.
Nothing strange about that. I mean, it's a good platform and has some awesome games on it. So
it's PlayStation.
My girlfriend actually works at PlayStation.
Oh yeah,
and she's just gone, you can't diss PlayStation. No.
That's great.
And it's actually, I'll tell a funny story. It's not related to that. But the day the PS4 Pro came out, I said, was everyone talking about it in the office? What was going on? And she goes, what were you talking about? Oh, I didn't even know that came out. She sort of works on sort of the back end, sort of managing the store and all the data that goes behind that, and she was completely oblivious to it.
That's so funny.
So she works at PlayStation, which I think, wow, that's a cool job. But she doesn't really seem to. And the same when the VR came out, she was there then.
Yeah.
And had absolutely no clue. I think someone was talking about it.
Didn't the game come out? Yeah, came out, yeah.
When she went to work there, she's like a contractor. I thought, I'm getting loads of free games, early before everyone else. But no, I'm not. I've got a free pen.
But that's the thing,
nice.
though. I don't know anybody that's bought a PS4 Pro. No one's saying, "Oh God, I really want to play 1800p games." You know.
Well, we got him here.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Well, of course. I mean, I've got, as I say, PC is my main platform now. So I've already got. I'm running a 980. So I'm not going to be able to play every game native 4K at 60 FPS, but I can get halfway. I can do that. Sports games and Forza I can run at 4K at 60. So,
or you can cap at 30, and you can do a lot of games that need a 4K.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if I want to just kind of match the console frame rate, but I can get the boost in the resolution.
Yep.
And then like those sports games run 60 anyway, and they look great. So I've got, and also I have the advantages of a PC. I haven't got to put the disc in. I haven't got to I can emulate. I'm backwards compatible all the way back to the Atari 2600. I can run last gen games at 4K. Like I was playing Outrun 2006 coast to coast. That can run at 4K, and it looks.
How is the PC version, by the way? Is it actually a match for? I've heard that it's like missing some of the visual effects from the original game.
So I've got the Xbox version as well, which works on the 360.
Okay.
Although there's some glitches when you try and run it on a 3. The sound is a bit weird.
Yeah, it's a little off.
It's a little off. Yeah, you have to sort of the music is really low, but if you fiddle with the audio, it will kind of snap it into the regular level that you on an original Xbox. But as far as I can tell, I don't think it's missing anything.
I need to take a look at that then, because I still play the game on my original Xbox.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I didn't know there was a PC version until a couple of years ago. I was like, oh my God, they made a PC version. I got it. It's great. And you can, it supports, I didn't have to mod it or anything. It supports all the way up to 4K.
That's cool.
And it looks great. And it runs at 60 flawlessly. There are mods as well. There's a whole mod community. People have added in, I think, new tracks and all kinds of stuff on there. So, yeah, it doesn't need any configuring at all. It runs pretty much straight away in Windows 10.
Awesome.
So, yeah, I would recommend it. But, yeah, I can run that. I actually played Space Marine, which came out in 2011.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, that was a good hack and slash kind of game, yeah. I can run that in 4K. It does slow down a little bit when there's loads of orcs on the screen. It drops from 60 a little bit, but nothing that's like, oh my God, it's gone terrible. That's all I've tried so far. I haven't had a chance to do it yet, but so I don't really have a need for a console generally. Really, I just have one.
Consoles are much better. Come on, they're just.
You know what? Don't be a fanboy. Don't be a fanboy about any console. Get them all if you can.
Yep, that's what I do.
Do the maximum. Get the Nintendo if you just obviously if you can afford it. Get the Xbox. Get the PlayStation. There'll be something on all of them. Yeah. That you'll enjoy. Don't be a fanboy ever, because you're missing out. It was fun when we were all kids and we were arguing in like the playground. But I think I would have loved to have had a Mega Drive and a Super Nintendo when I was
absolutely.
But yeah, so it's funny. I'm not sure they'll reach any kind of critical kind of mass that developers will think, right, we're not making an Xbox regular version anymore. We're just going to make a One X version. I don't think that's ever going to happen.
Do you think it will be the Xbox One X? Do you think that will be a success?
I actually do think it'll do at least fairly well. But I think more than anything, it's very good for the Xbox brand. Because traditionally, the Xbox has always been about power, right?
Yeah.
The original Xbox and the 360. I know someone would argue otherwise, but I say that they were both both better pieces of hardware than the competition at the time.
I agree.
So,
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, then Xbox One comes along and they kind of use the same strategy as Sony. It's the same vendor, it's AMD, but they kind of undershot the specs a little bit. And I think,
that was just bizarre, wasn't it?
With the PlayStation Pro, I was of the opinion that, oh my God, we're going to get inundated with all these PlayStation 4s, people trading them in. No one's going to want to buy a PlayStation 4. Everyone's going to want to buy the PS4 Pro. But it's not really been like that.
No, I wouldn't expect
buy a PS4 and then just go and get the PS4 Slim or buy a second-hand original PS4. And the fact that there is a Pro out there that people still don't quite understand, what they're buying there and what extra they're getting, and I don't think people are that really, that much more interested in it. And I was surprised by that. I thought, people would be ditching their PS4s and getting the new one. That's what I wanted to do. But then in sort of reality, I don't know if there's been a bit of a shortage of them, but everyone just seems to be carry on buying the normal PS4, which, well, why did they make the new one then?
Well, I think they're just providing options for the people that do want a better system, especially if you're upgrading to like a 4K TV. And I think it's going to be the same with Xbox One X. I mean, Phil Spencer himself said that they expect to sell many more Xbox One S's next year as opposed to the X, just because of the price difference. I mean, so it's like you have a product at the lower price to get, the mass market in. And then you have, your high-end premium product that kind of like sticks out as like, the one you want to aspire to, but you don't necessarily need. But I think in the case of the Xbox One X, Microsoft has kind of done a better job, sort of, I want to say hype, but like they've kind of made a better case for it in a way. Like people really know more like, oh, wow, this is the Xbox One X. It's coming. It's super powerful. And in fact, the gap between the Xbox One and the X is dramatically larger than the difference between the PS4 and the PS4 Pro as well. So that might help them too. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've mentioned this before on our show as well. I think there'll be an Xbox One laptop. There was like I know everyone laughs at me, but I think if they release something, it'll probably have to be about at least double the price. But I think like Aorus made that amazing 15-inch laptop that's mega thin and has a 1070 in it, or kind of a slightly weaker 1070. Oh, it's a 1080, but it's more like a 1070.
Right. Yeah.
But that can like destroy a PS4 Pro, but it's in like a ridiculously small frame. I think if they can engineer down the Xbox One, maybe not the X, but the original into a laptop, they've got another member of the family that they could potentially pump out there that will, they wouldn't expect to shift many units. But I think if people get used to the idea of a couple of consoles running simultaneously that are kind of the same thing, that might open up,
I wonder, though, in that space, you have Microsoft with the Surface hardware. It feels like they'd rather integrate Xbox into Windows more than develop like another laptop-like device for it, Because, I mean, like the Surface hardware is pretty great. I'm using a Surface Book right here as well, actually, in addition to the desktop. And it's a beautiful piece of hardware, really, really nicely made.
There's a YouTube channel of people trying to run games on the Surface, like Grand Theft Auto 5 and stuff, and it actually does pretty well.
Yeah, they've made some great hardware. It's really cool, very portable. That kind of thing is what I could see them trying to push towards with more. I don't know. I mean, they've been really supportive of the PC.
Yeah.
Right? And some people are like, well, that just takes away any reason I would want to own an Xbox then. But I don't really think they care. It's more about, I mean, I'm sure they care, but it's more about getting people buying games on their platforms, whether that's Windows or Xbox. It's all Microsoft.
Yeah, the brand is still alive. You're not killing the brand, really. I mean, I guess you could predict that in the future, the consoles are basically just a PC locked to the Xbox store, or a console locked to the Sony store, or a PC locked to the Sony store. Really, and I guess they're almost like that already now.
Kind of, yeah.
As their sort of x86.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I think at least on the Sony and Nintendo side, they'll probably stay more console throughout. But obviously, Microsoft has a vested interest in Windows. Like that's huge for them. And I think, go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, when you like in terms of like platforms and how when they used to make them, bespoke kind of custom-made chips and everything, that would often result in something that was very difficult to program. Although often the easy to program system didn't always win, which is strange. Like the Dreamcast, for example, was supposedly easy to program, and the PS2 was horrendous to program. But
well, I mean, in that case, the Dreamcast it's an amazing machine. I was a huge fan of it, but it's somewhat underpowered compared to the competition that would follow. Like it just can't do the raw geometry calculations that you need to do a multi-platform game at that time. Like the games on Xbox, GameCube, and PS2, there's so many of them that just couldn't have worked on Dreamcast.
He was kind of a victim of being out too early, really.
It was just a little too early. Like, it was really cool hardware for the time, but it was just a little too early, and it was weak in some of those areas that just it would have killed it.
Do you think it could have handled Grand Theft Auto 3?
I suspect that would have been a real issue because the Dreamcast really struggled with data throughput.
Yeah,
it's like, you know, reading that from the drive fast enough and filling it into memory and being able to, like, I don't know. I think Grand Theft Auto 3 would have been a real struggle for the Dreamcast. It was already a struggle for the PS2, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, those types of open world games are not. That's really, really a difficult thing, and that was just the generation when it really started to kick off on consoles. And I don't even think that generation, outside of the Xbox, maybe, was really well suited to delivering those types of games. I mean, people enjoyed them on there, but it was kind of pushing the limits of what you could do.
I think the Xbox might have been a bit better but I guess it was kind of hamstrung by the fact that it got a lot of ports on the PS2.
Yeah. But at least the ports in general were, like, excellent.
yeah. I mean, it was often the best version, kind of like
exactly.
the 360. It was the best version of a multi-plat game. But it's funny when you got to the PS3 and the Xbox 360 that there were two. They're both made by. They're both Power PC. Although it was Nintendo that pioneered the whole putting of. Well, I guess it was Apple with the Pippin, but if you can count that. But they pioneered the whole using a Power PC chip as a console.
Yeah, the whole story behind the. Are you guys familiar with the story behind the development of those CPUs?
Well, the Dolphin.
No, like with PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360.
I know that. I've read a little bit about them where they kind of worked. IBM worked simultaneously on both of them, but they weren't allowed to let on to the other side that they were making an Xbox chip. And it wasn't. It was like the PS3 was made first, and they kind of and the Xbox 360 was a more efficient spin-off of the PS3 chip.
Yeah, Microsoft kind of came in late and said they wanted to do this project, and IBM, I guess, really wanted their business, so they kind of put them in different floors on the same building, but separated them. And they had at least a few key people working for both chips, and they were not supposed to share with them because Toshiba and Sony were also housed in that same building with IBM employees.
Yeah.
If they had known what was going on at the time, it could have been bad. And in fact, from reading the book of one of those lead guys that worked on the chip, I mean, there was problems with the core that would crop up that didn't impact the PlayStation side, but did impact the Xbox side. And they had to have Sony engineers fix it because that was part of the Sony project. And then the guys, of course, wondering, like, why are you having me fix this? This doesn't have anything to do with us.
Yeah, but they were just kind of had to pretend, it's just some project, little thing I'm working on.
And it's funny to hear, like, one of the stories he told, it's like he comes in the morning and all the Xbox guys early on were excited. They're all coming in a big group wearing Xbox shirts, and they all hop in the elevator, and like Sony guys get on the elevator and like, what? And then they don't get off. They stay in the elevator, so they're obviously going to another floor. And it's
what
just
scenario are you going to be just hanging out in an Xbox T-shirt?
It's just amazing.
IBM.
And you're right. It was all IBM's doing. I mean, that they kind of like played the two off of each other, right?
Yeah, it's another funny thing about that, because I remember like around that 2004, 2005 time, I was like in my highest point of being an Apple fanboy, and it actually pissed me off because the Mac obviously was the kind of the led the whole Power PC, using Power PC chips. The Mac did, and then we got to that weird point in the mid 2000s, in 2005, where they were kind of, whoever were like Freescale and the people that were making the Power PC chips for the Macs, they were kind of being really crap at like updating them, and you're kind of stuck at 2.9 gigahertz for ages.
Yeah.
And it basically was because all the resources were being plumbed into making these consoles, which probably were much higher profit margin, and they got these big orders for millions of them, which they would never have gotten from Apple. And
it was a huge thing for sure.
Yeah, and then like the 360 came out, and it was like a £200 console that was far more powerful than a $2,000 Power Mac G5. And I was like, someone shoved that into the Power Mac. Then we could finally get a powerful Power Mac that we've been waiting for. It was interesting.
The weird thing about that is, the main core created for those systems is very, very similar, like almost the same, right? So the Xbox 360 has 3 of those cores, and that's the CPU, whereas the PS3 has 1 of those cores and then the SPEs. But the actual core is basically the same.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So,
and I feel like Microsoft's
cut from the same cloth, basically.
Kind of a better approach at that point.
And I think there was the other thing where is it the video RAM? Is it the Xbox 360 is more RAM?
Well, yeah. So
512
360, they have the same amount of total memory, but the 360 used unified memory architecture, which meant that you had all 512 available for anything. If you wanted to use it as VRAM or system RAM, it didn't matter. You could divide it up how you wanted to. But on PlayStation 3, you had 256 megs of VRAM and 256 of system memory, and you couldn't like sort of go between them really. So you had to make it work within a stricter kind of budget there, and that gave a lot of developers problems in the end.
Because what I liked about you probably explain why I liked it, the Xbox 360. To my eyes, the games didn't actually look any better than the PlayStation 3. But what I liked, it was just the whole sort of operating system that all just works so much more fluidly. And you put the games in. Okay, you might have got a little update. But with the PlayStation 3, God, sometimes I'm dreading turning mine on, because if you ever want to play a game, it's just, downloading this, updating that.
Gran Turismo 5 was the worst for that.
It just takes absolutely forever.
A full day to get that set up.
Yeah, exactly. You have to just leave it on overnight. I wanted to bloody play the thing. Yeah.
What was the reason, really, that the Xbox 360 had... I don't know. Was it something to do with the memory?
Well, there is one, not really
operating system, or
well, first of all, Microsoft software engineers, I'd say, are probably kind of better because
a little bit better. Yeah,
that's just that's their bread and butter, right?
Mm.
But really, they made some interesting choices on 360 that really paid off, like patch size limitations. Games were, I think back then, most games I don't know what the strict limit was, but in general, you pop in a 360 game and the patches would download very rapidly. Like literally, 10, 20 seconds most of the time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Super quick. On PlayStation 3, like even at the beginning, there wasn't even a system-wide patching system. Like you'd insert a game like Resistance, and it would boot the game, and then the game itself would search for a patch and start updating itself. And you're literally just sitting there staring at like a loading bar within the game itself. And it was really clunky, and you're right. I don't think it worked that well. Although I think Microsoft kind of made the 360 a little bit worse in the end when they kept updating the OS with too many features.
Yes.
Like early on with the Blades, it was super fast, right?
Mm.
The Xbox One UI is absolutely horrendous. It's really confusing. If they went back to the Xbox 360 one, which now seems like a streamlined, as hell, it's so super easy when you jump back to get to where you need to get to. But the Xbox One is so confusing.
I will say that I did briefly fiddle with the Xbox One UI on an Xbox One X dev kit. And it did, just from that very quick, like flicking through some of the settings, and because I was changing some settings for Forza 7, it seemed way more responsive than the regular Xbox One.
It's literally because it's a more powerful kit. So
yeah.
I think my question is, obviously you've played an Xbox One X.
Yeah.
What's it like? Is it better than a top end PC, or?
Well, to me, it kind of gave that impression of playing a PC game on a fast PC. Essentially, like I didn't get to play as many games as I'd like on there, but the ones I played, like Forza 7, looked absolutely, it's Forza, it looks great. But what really surprised me was seeing Assassin's Creed Origins on there, because it just it seemed like it was running at, I think it's dynamic res between 1800 and 2160p with checkerboarding.
Yeah.
Which again, you got to keep in mind that the Xbox One and PS4 versions of those games were 900p games.
That's a huge leap, yeah.
So, I mean, that's a huge leap. And the game itself just looks so much better than those other ones in a lot of ways. Although Unity still looks pretty good. But, just seeing that in motion on the real hardware and with the clarity and everything and the very, very stable performance, even at this point, it was really quite eye-opening. Whereas I went and played Far Cry 5 on a PS4 Pro, which was not as sharp looking because it was like 1440p, I think. and there was a lot more slowdown. Which again, I think I'm sure it'll be corrected by the time it launches. But even at this stage, the Xbox One X was just like chewing through Assassin's Creed Origins with no problem at all, and that surprised me.
Yeah,
I'm sold. I'm definitely getting one.
It's funny because I didn't really know of the concept of games internally being rendered at a lower resolution than what gets output until I started reading Digital Foundry in the sort of late 2000s. Because I always thought, my TV says 720p. Great, I'm playing a 720p game. When in reality, like Red Dead Redemption on the PS3 was like 540p or something.
Yeah, it was it's pretty or 648p, like 1152 by 648. I think it was. And that's kind of a byproduct of the modern displays using flat panels because they have like a native resolution, right? If you go back to a CRT, that's not the case.
Yeah. I mean,
So
I think that was I think the PS2 did that as well, didn't I? think some games are actually like a lot lower than the sort of 4.8.
Yeah, if you actually look at the resolutions on PS2 games, they're all over the place. Like Silent Hill 2 is 512 by 512.
Like so it sounds like what an icon in Windows would be, sort of like that.
It's so weird. And then I'm working on Soul Reaver right now on the original PlayStation even, and that is actually 512 by 240.
Yeah.
Which is really high for a PlayStation game, actually. I was surprised at how sharp it is.
I think going like back in the day, like the Amiga had 200, it was like 200p. It's like 320 by 200, so you always got a big black border down the bottom.
Yeah, but you could display any resolution you wanted, really, and it would it could work as long as it was within the specifications, but it wasn't fixed to a pixel grid, right?
Yeah,
There was no upscaling, so like the pixels were not blurred, whereas on an LCD or a modern TV, it has to scale to match the resolution of the display, so you inevitably end up with some blur, which is why checkerboarding is so good, because if you do it at full... If you do the 2160p checkerboarding, you don't get any upscale blur, right? That's the main advantage. It's still razor sharp pixels, so that's why I like the technique.
Okay, so big question for you here, then, John.
Okay,
this might get some negative comments depending on how you answer. Mega Drive or Super Nintendo? Which one are you going to go for?
Can I say both?
No.
Oh, shit. Can't sit on the fence.
I mean, as many great games as there are on the Super NES, my heart belongs with the Mega Drive.
Cool. It's funny. I'm kind of the same. It's weird because I'm a Sega fanboy, so by default, I'm always going to be like,
me too.
Game Gear is better than Game Boy, Master System is better than NES, Mega Drive's better than Super Nintendo. I mean, I like the Super Nintendo from multi-plats tend to be a little bit better unless it's something that has lots of things on screen, like a sports game.
Right.
The Mega Drive versions are always better in that case. But from a collector point of view, the Mega Drive I think is a little bit better because the games are cheaper.
And they come in those awesome plastic cases.
Yeah, the best cases ever. But I don't know. So I tend to find I play the Super Nintendo more these days.
I kind of play them both somewhat equally, but weirdly enough, I feel like something I've discovered with like PlayStation and Super NES is they have a lot of larger scale games, like role-playing games and things that you're supposed to sink time into, which is great at the time. But when you're going back and you just want to revisit games and pop them in and play, I find it's the more arcade style action games that I get into, which is why I play a lot of Mega Drive and Sega Saturn and Dreamcast.
Yeah.
Because they have so many games like that are just awesome to pop in and you play for an hour and you're done and you had a great time.
Yeah, I mean, when I play Super Nintendo, I don't play like Terranigma or like...
No, of course.
I play like Super Mario All-Stars. And
yeah, of course.
Mario Kart and Street Fighter 2. And when I'm on I think the one my go-to game is Contra on both of them.
Okay, I'm with you on that. Actually, I love Contra 3. I love them both, but Contra 3 and the SNES I played so much when I was younger, and I still have it memorized, so I can just blast through it in one sitting.
Yeah, when you come home from work, you just want to slouch down. You just grab the controller, especially if we've got the 8-bit Super Nintendo controller. So
those are great.
Got a wireless controller. It's friggin' awesome. I need to make a Mega Drive one. If you're listening, 8-bit though, make a bloody wireless.
I'm gonna do a review on all of those controllers soon, just because I think they're so freaking great. I want to spread the word, but I think I will definitely put that in there. Like, guys, let's make a Mega Drive one.
Mega Drive one, please. Because there
the
were
6-button one, the 6-button Mega Drive controller in 8-bit DOS style. Oh,
it's the only one. Yeah, the only pad is the 6-button. But there was official Sega infrared controllers, but they're infrared, so if someone walks in front of the screen.
Yeah, I actually have those.
Are they as bad as everyone says?
They're not so bad if you're like, if you actually have a dedicated setup and you're just playing there, you're fine. But you're right, if
it's
you sit too far back or somebody walks in front of it, then yeah, obviously it's going to cut out.
And the 8-bit though ones are friggin' awesome. So yeah,
they are.
They're great.
Did you buy all of your retro systems in the States and sort of bring them over in a big container with? Or
predominantly, yes. So I also lived in Japan for a year, and when I was there, I bought some of my systems there as well. So my collection is very much split between Japanese and American. And I brought all of it here when I moved to Europe. And since moving here, I did buy a few PAL systems and have some PAL games as well, just, kind of fun to mess with. But I predominantly collect NTSC stuff.
So how long are you in Europe for? Are you staying here as long as Digital Foundry will employ you for, or that didn't mean to sound negative. I'm sure they'll employ you for
itching to get out.
Well, I'm here because of my wife more than anything else, and she's French, so staying in Europe is we'll probably be here a while. It's already been more than 4 years, I guess now. So
you've gotten used to the slowed down 50 hertz Sonic now, haven't you? So
yeah, exactly.
In terms of so we've already done Mega Drive and Super Nintendo, PlayStation, and the N64. Which one?
What about Saturn?
Do
a 3-way question.
Okay.
Well, here's the thing: if you do a 3-way question, I'm picking the Saturn.
Yeah.
All right. Let's. Okay. We'll assume that's the best. What's second best?
For me, it's PlayStation for sure.
Yeah, same here.
I think so.
Again, both just in terms of revisiting, there's a lot of awesome 2D and 3D games that are super fast frame rates. They still look great. They play great. It's just easy to pop in and have fun with them. Plus, all the RPGs and such. Where N64 was kind of pioneering a lot of 3D graphics techniques, and a lot of the games just they don't hold up nearly as well because the frame rates are unbelievably low, and it doesn't have the same appeal that it used to. It's just kind of slow paced, and I mean, I still love a lot of the best N64 games, but there's a lot of chaff on there that doesn't hold up.
Yeah,
I'll get into lots of arguments for this because I know a lot of super hardcore Nintendo fanboys, but I'm I'll play Mario 64 and it'll bring back great memories of how amazing that was. But then after that, I'll play 6 PlayStation games.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
It's
and you're right. For me, it's especially the 2D games from that era where that was the pinnacle of 2D gaming, both on Saturn and PlayStation. I mean, the Symphonies of the Nights.
Yeah, exactly.
Gradius Gaiden on there on PlayStation. Of course, Saturn has just an unbelievable amount of awesome 2D games on it. Just they hold up amazingly well.
Well, there's obviously areas where the N64 isn't covered really at all, fighting games. There's kind of fighting
there's
games.
A couple on there, isn't there?
Not
much. But
you got an all right Mortal Kombat trilogy. Although some people hate the N64 version, I think it's all right. But there's no Tekken. There's anything like that. No light gun games.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Okay, you got Ridge Racer 64, but it's not really Ridge Racer. You've got.
I think there's a few good racing games on there.
F1 World Grand Prix is all pretty good, but then there's a PlayStation version.
Adventure Racing.
Yeah, that's probably one of the best ones. Actually,
that's good.
I used to like Top Gear Rally. Oh, that's
Top Gear Rally, yeah.
That good. But
there's this one
Cruising series.
Yeah, there's the cruising games.
Cruising USA, yeah. Killer Instinct Gold is all right. Wave Race, but I just prefer Ridge Racer generally, so they don't do anything for me. And the racing games I do play consistently is Mario Kart. So the best Mario Kart is 64. I'm going to say, big controversial there. But I mean, as a Sega fanboy, I friggin' love the Sega arcade games on the Saturn. And Sega Rally and Virtual. I mean, that Christmas '95 and Rich probably had to back this up back at Digital Foundry. That window of releases that they had Virtua Cop, Sega Rally, Virtua Fighter 2, all those coming out at once. I mean, it kind of pretty much, in my opinion, blew away what the PlayStation had coming out in Christmas.
Yeah, and I feel like it was almost just like bad timing in a way, in the sense that it was right at the era when people were starting to get into role-playing games in a big way.
Yeah.
On the PlayStation, I got, my Final Fantasies and stuff, and like suddenly arcade-style games were less important.
Yeah.
Back from 2017, I feel like, well, I'd kind of rather revisit the arcade games at this point, like,
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, it's. I think it wouldn't have been possible, but if it was maybe a year earlier that it came out with those sort of games.
Yeah.
And well, I always say, they shouldn't have bothered with the 32X. They should have just gone straight to the
Saturn. That was such a mistake. I mean, wow.
I don't mind the Mega CD. I don't begrudge them the Mega CD. That was a pretty good system on its own.
Oh, Mega CD was awesome. There's a lot of great stuff on there. I mean, people think about the FMV games, but there's a lot more to it than the FMV games.
Yeah, I kind of think that the Mega CD and maybe the the SVP chip, make more games. That'll be your 32X. Come out with what they were thinking of, the add-on that was going to be just the SVP chip on its own, and maybe you have that alongside games that have it in the cartridge for people that wanted to go that way. Use that as your 32X. Add a bit of extra life to the Mega Drive, and I think things might have been a bit different, but I don't know. I mean, Sony had so much money, and it's difficult to see how they would have survived.
Yeah, that's a really tough one. And Nintendo had that hype for so long. Like, everybody was like, "Oh, N64 is coming, the Ultra 64."
Well, there was an argument that where people said, "Oh, if the N64 came out in '95, it would have destroyed Sony."
I'm not sure that's the case.
Oh no,
but I think it's a weird one.
For me, the problem was everyone wanted games on CDs because they were just backed by the cartridges, because you couldn't get.
Final Fantasy VII would still have come out on the PlayStation.
Well, exactly, and as bad as all these FMV games were at the time, people were, I want a bit of video in there. I want a proper CD soundtrack. I want this and I want that, and I remember on sort of TV shows over here at the time, everything was compared to how many floppy disks it is. Yeah. So a CD is 600 floppy disks. A cartridge is 40 floppy disks. And you'll think, well, actually, why would I buy a system?
Not even that, really.
Yeah, not even that.
You could fit you could fit Mario 64 on 3 floppy disks.
Yeah. 6 Amiga ones.
You could fit all of Ridge Racer in the RAM of the PlayStation 1.
That's right.
That's true. Yeah, you can take the disc out.
Yeah. It's just sad, isn't it? Because Sega were basically the default console, basically in the UK from the late 80s to the 93, 94. And the first, we talked about before, where in the UK, the first popular Nintendo system was actually the Game Boy, which is something that never really gets mentioned. The Super Nintendo, I don't remember really seeing a lot of people have that until around 1993. But we got it very, very late. We got it in April 1992, which is insane when you think the Mega Drive was already nearly 2 years old by that point. So one thing I wanted to mention that you kind of triggered there was, so you say, CD quality sound, right? Everybody talked about, the PlayStation, you could have CD quality sound. But in reality, most of it was due to the evolution, the sound chip, which was sort of an evolution of what they did in the Super NES. Where it was mostly sequenced music, and you could do that with very little space, right? So like some of the best soundtracks on there, like Chrono Cross, Xenogears, games like that, that's not like CD audio. It's not pre-recorded music. It's just sample-based sequence tunes, right? Yeah. That's
the kind of thing you could have done on a cartridge game. But Nintendo cheapened out, and there's no sound chip in the N64. It all has to be done on the CPU, and I feel like a really good sound chip in the N64 would have done wonders for it, and they could have produced sound that was so much richer than what they ended up with. And so on PlayStation, most games didn't end up using things like Red Book audio or pre-recorded XA audio just because of space considerations, and you could still get amazing sounding games without it.
Yeah, it's funny because the only game I can think of, I'm sure there's tons of them, but that kind of seems to be pretty much all the PlayStation sound chip instead of just streaming audio off Redbook Audio is Mortal Kombat 2, the Japanese Mortal Kombat 2.
Is that Redbook?
The PS1? No, the whole thing is just the PlayStation sound chip. I don't think there's any Redbook Audio in it at all.
Yeah, I mean, Redbook is actually really kind of uncommon on the PlayStation in the end. Like the first year or two, it was everywhere, but then it kind of disappeared, and you ended up just getting lots of sound chip generated music.
Yeah, because you could pop the disc in your CD player, and you could get the Ridge Racer soundtrack and all that, and then all of a sudden the disc didn't have that. I always thought
it just went away.
They were like MP3s or something, is what I thought they were. Or
no, they're just it's just like files with like this, basically the samples that you would use that you load into memory and play. It works a lot like the Super NES, except for you could do 24 channels instead of 8, and there was more memory, so you could do higher quality samples, which is why you could do, I mean, you hear Chrono Cross, right? And that sounds still incredible today. But that's all just this PlayStation sound chip. Yeah.
Well, Ken Kutaragi is kind of a pioneer, wasn't he, with the Super Nintendo sound chip? But then I think there's that legend that apparently the PS3 CPU is 7 cores because he thought that looked nice, as opposed to actually being practical.
It was the 6 SPEs. That's what it was. He actually came into IBM and said, "Yeah, we need," or it might have even been 8 total, but then they turned one off in the end. It was either 6 or 8, and he thought it was beautiful.
Not because it had any practical use. It was just because, And
it was like, okay, and what are they going to do? They tried to fight, and they ended up having to do it anyway.
Yeah, it's just weird, isn't it? But then there's that thing, funny little like decisions like that. And from what I've read, I think the Super Nintendo, I think the intention was always to give it a slightly gimped CPU, which is why it's got that sort of 3 megahertz 65816, whatever it's called, with knowing that they were going to stick support chips in the cartridges, and that's how you're trying to get around that.
There's that, and also the fact that the CPU is related to the same family from the NES.
Yeah, that's right.
And it sounds like they were originally engineering it to support original NES games as well. And
have you seen the prototype Super Nintendo pictures?
Yeah, exactly.
It has like they were going to make a new NES as well, which looks totally different than the NES top loader, and that was going to have a weird pass through to the Super Nintendo.
Oh, that's super weird.
You could have, you could look them up on the internet. Like this Japanese magazine had the prototype pictures. Basically, the idea was you'd have your newer version of a Famicom, and then you'd have the Super Famicom, and it'd have a cable that would pass through to the Super Famicom. So you had 2 separate units, but with a cable joining them, and then you'd be able to play your NES games through the Super Famicom via the pass-through. It was weird. And I
technically speaking, what they could have done in the end, I'm sure it would have been feasible engineering-wise, is the equivalent of the Super Game Boy, but for NES games.
Yeah, I guess.
Embed the hardware in a cartridge, and you plug, especially with Famicom games, which are small, just plug that into the top of that other cartridge and play it on your SNES.
I think they could have made like a 1-chip NES even by that point.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they could have absolutely pulled that off if they thought the market was there.
Yeah, but isn't that the chip in the SNES is the 65816? Is that not able to run like a NES?
It can actually run. I believe so. I'm pretty certain that it could run NES code. So anything else that they
like the Mega Drive can run Master System, kind of like that.
Exactly, that kind of thing. That's right.
Why didn't they do that? That's so weird.
I mean, from what I understand, that was originally an idea in there, but it was a cost-cutting measure. Like, the system was just going to be too expensive, so they ended up cutting it down.
Sony would use that trick by kind of embedding the hardware of the previous generation console.
Yeah, for a while. I mean,
yeah.
That was very clever, actually, I will admit.
Well, we were talking, Stu, remember we were talking in the last show where the best PS3 is probably the US or the Japanese launch model, because it's got the PS1 hardware and both the graphics synthesizer and the EE motion engine from the PS2.
Yes and no. It's more like I have one of those, but of course it's dead.
It's not the most reliable.
Yeah.
If it works, it's good.
And amazingly, I've only had one Xbox 360 red ring on me, and it was my launch unit. It lasted for like 4 years, and then it red ringed.
Wow.
I had to replace it. That's it, though. It's the only one that ever went out on me.
I had about 3 or 4 go wrong for me.
Yeah.
But talking about the NES and the Super Nintendo, I remember there was a video going around, Reddit or somewhere, where all these parents were complaining when the Super Nintendo came out, saying
there's been news
reports, and they're going, "Oh my God, I've got to buy another console for my, my little Johnny, and I've got to buy all these games. The controllers don't work with it," and it was, they were making out that Nintendo was some sort of,
it's weird because backwards compatibility is an on and off thing. Sometimes they put. I mean, I love it. I think it's great. I love minimizing the consoles that I have to have out and plugged in.
Yes, that's the big thing.
Yeah, with my Mega Drive, I can play Master System on it. With my PS2, I've got PS1. With the 360, I've got a lot of Xbox games. The ones that I like don't work, but the 2D fighters don't work, apart from Street Fighter 2, weirdly. The Xbox One, kind of a few hundred now, but it's missing a ton that I would be interested in playing.
It's true, but it's really good, though. The 360 stuff on Xbox One, it's better than an actual Xbox One now.
Yeah, but then there was
performance is better.
That report came out, didn't it? Where it's like apparently 1% of Xbox One owners use that or something.
That's frustrating to read.
That was heartbreaking.
I know, because it's such an amazing feature. It's really well done.
But then I do know people that, and this is probably most people, we're just nerds like us that, keep all this.
Exactly.
But I know people that literally they buy the new console and the next day they are literally flogging they're getting rid of the old console and a pile of games. They just don't care. They have no emotional attachment to it. Maybe in 20 years down the line they'll be like, "Oh, wish I kept that Xbox 360." But yeah, I think that's why.
I think, sorry to interrupt, I think the thing is, with backwards compatibility, it's got to be all or nothing. It can't be, the drip feeding games through, now you can get Black Ops 2, now you can get Red Dead Redemption, now you can get another one, because the people aren't going to come and buy, they're going to come into my shop, for example, or they'll look on Amazon, or they go to other shops, and they'll be, actually, I've got an Xbox One. Hold on, does this one work?
Game that doesn't work.
They just work. If they know all 360 games will play on an Xbox One, they'll just go and buy the ones that they want. But at the moment, it's 10% of games play, and people in the know will know which one. But in reality, it's people don't know which games will play, and I think that's a sort of a bit of a downfall. So hopefully when they do the Xbox original, or OG as someone calls it, games, hopefully they'll just almost make a bit of software on there so everything will just play.
No, I don't think that's possible because of the way that they do it, where they have to repackage the games and create downloads for them. And
I know,
I think they get into legal issues there, that's a big part of why the games are rolling out. I mean, there's actual work that has to go into making sure that each one works, but
I think they're modifying the code of the original game, so they've got to go and ask permission.
Yeah, they're not actually modifying the original game code, but they're building wrappers around them, and they're doing stuff that could potentially, I think, get them into some legal hot water if they were not essentially working deals with these publishers.
Don't you put the game in, say for example you put Black Ops 2 in, and it just downloads a copy of Black Ops 2.
The disc is just a key.
And the disc is just something to say, they physically got it. So it's not reading anything off the disc.
It's basically a virtual machine that you're downloading. It runs a shell in which the game is installed inside of. Yeah, so, I mean, disc use would be awesome, but, I mean, I don't see how they could... With the way that they're doing it, I'm not sure it could work easily.
Okay, so obviously time's getting on, so we'll get onto one last subject so we can all, go back to our families. So the SNES Mini. So you guys getting one?
Oh yeah, I'll be doing a review on that for sure.
Yeah.
I was away in Las Vegas, so I think I woke up one morning and everyone was talking about it, and I couldn't find it on my phone, so I didn't get to pre-order one. But I'm still looking.
Yeah, you didn't get to pre-order one. Oh, that's it now.
No, well, that's it. I'm stuffed.
Yeah. Do you think there's going to be an N64 Mini?
I don't know.
I don't think that. I think they're going to have some trouble with that because a lot of the most popular N64 games, there are issues with them. Like they can't put GoldenEye on it unless they buy a Bond license. That's going to annoy all the nostalgia trippers that are going to be like, oh yeah, but like when we were at uni, we can all gather around it and play 4-player GoldenEye. Oh, it's not on the N64 Mini. Oh, that's a shame. I'm not buying one. Banjo-Kazooie. I think Microsoft own that now. Conker's Bad Fur Day. Microsoft own that now.
Yeah, that is kind of an issue, right? They'd have to work out a deal with Microsoft to make it happen.
Yeah, and is that going to happen? Can they talk to? Is that allowed when you're having a?
The only thing I could see is like Rare did put out some Game Boy Advance games, I think, after Microsoft purchased them.
Yeah,
like it's not unheard of, and in fact, I don't know. I feel like it could potentially happen, but I don't know.
Some people are saying, "Oh yeah, Conker's Bad Fur Day, that would be a big loss if they can't have that." But they're not going to put that on a family-friendly.
No, they wouldn't put that on there.
Well, that's it. All those games they came out on that Rare Replay, but they didn't have GoldenEye because Nintendo still had the rights to GoldenEye.
I think it was Activision.
Really?
Yeah.
Like it was a mix of Nintendo, Activision, and Rare. Like there's like a big legal thing all around that. That just ended up kind of falling through because GoldenEye 360 was basically completed.
Reloaded.
Oh not Reloaded. The remake of the Rare game. They actually it was completed, playable, but it was not able to be released.
It got like leaked, and it was like sort of everything was 16:9, but it looked great. Yeah,
it was running super smooth. I mean, it was a huge thing.
Amazing.
But unfortunately, it just got cut up in legal problems and never was released.
So none of that. Everyone firing rockets off in a thin corridor to make the frame rate tank to 4 frames a second.
That's right.
Causing the blood to like slowly trickle down. Yeah. So yeah, I think there may be a Game Boy Mini.
See, that I think is an awesome idea because
because
you could do a more modern screen in there and then just make it look kind of Game Boy-ish, maybe. I don't know. I think you could have some real fun with doing a portable, a Game Boy Mini kind of thing.
I recently got a modded original DMG Game Boy with a backlit and a biverted screen, and I got an EverDrive. Yeah, and I've fallen in love with the Game Boy again because of it. Because I can now play all these games on an original unit, in bed, in the dark, or any kind of lighting condition. And they look great. And with an EverDrive in there, I've got games that I never got when I was a kid. I'm able to. Like, we were playing Contra. We talked about Contra. It had a couple of really good Contra games. Contra 3 came out on the Game Boy, and it's good.
By Factor 5.
Yeah. They did loads of weird random ports in those days. They made the International Superstar Soccer Deluxe for the Mega Drive, where they converted the Konami game from the SNES. Weird. That's how these guys start out, isn't it? But yeah, really good. Contra 3, Castlevania's great on the Game Boy.
2, yeah, Castlevania 2 especially is just amazing.
Yeah, the first one's got really slow. The pace is really slow.
The first one's not good.
Yeah, it has screen tearing.
Yeah. But the second one's great. The Contra games, yeah.
Yep.
I would recommend that.
Mega Man games.
Yeah, they're good, yeah.
I'm lucky to have all 5 of them, but from what I've been checking, it looks like the price for Mega Man 5 on the Game Boy is like unbelievably high right now.
It was funny because we had a show you may have seen, John, like a few months ago. We talked about the Game Boy. We sort of mentioned that the Game Boy's kind of flown under the radar a little bit in terms of Nintendo collecting.
Yep.
But literally in the last few months, that has changed completely.
Yep.
Like I was talking earlier about, I'm trying to get a copy of just Mortal Kombat 3 because I like the Mortal Kombat game. The Game Boy version is horrendous, but I want it just to have in the collection. But to get that boxed, it's like 25, 30 quid now. That was about £10, like 3 or 4 years ago. So yeah, it's creeping up.
And then you get into the more rare stuff like Trip World.
Yeah,
you seen that?
Yeah. There was loads of those funny little obscure. There must have been low print runs or something.
Yeah, late games like Mega Man 5 is that case where it's like a low print run kind of game. I just saw a copy sell for like $1,200.
Really? Oh my god!
Fully boxed. Like it's very hard to find in that condition to begin with, but it's a very uncommon game. And there's a few games like that. I feel like soon we'll see more of that happening on the Game Boy.
Yeah, you need to get.
Like
I
you
mean,
say.
I think the SNES is all the rage at the moment. I think the N64 is a little bit behind it, and the Game Boy is probably dead last. But
Yep, big time. The one to collect for right now actually is well, it's a weird one, but if you want to go for the original Xbox, there's a lot of great games on there, and the prices are so low. I mean, there's places like buy 10 for 10.
Yeah, I thought we'd be past that, because a few years ago I did make a point. You know what? I'm going to get, because that was my favorite system of that.
It's a great system, yeah.
Yeah, the original Xbox. So I never got rid of mine. So I kept adding to the collection without really aiming to collect. Then I sort of realised around 2009, you know what, this is going to go up soon, so I better get all these 50p, games that are like, stupidly cheap.
We still sell so many games in the shop for the original Xbox.
That's great.
And for, £1 each.
I think we're in the last couple of years of that. I think that's going to go up now. When those fire sales have cleared out, that's when it's going to mean, obviously, the big one is Steel Battalion. I think that's always been.
Literally the big one.
Yeah.
Then there's some weirdly rare ones are uncommon, like Outrun 2006.
Yeah, I had to pay like 30 quid for that recently.
Not super cheap. Obviously, everybody loves to talk about Metal Wolf Chaos.
Yeah.
Which is Japan only and quite pricey at this point.
Yeah.
There's a few games like that, but yeah, the system's awesome. There's a lot of great games on there. It was basically Dreamcast 2 in a lot of ways. Sega's all over it.
Especially in the early years, yeah. Panzer Dragoon and Jet Set Radio.
Jet Set, there's Gun Valkyrie, Crazy Taxi 3.
Sega GT.
Obviously, Shenmue 2.
Yeah. That has gone up as well, obviously, because of Shenmue 3.
Oh, yeah.
But it's kind of difficult to say whether that's better than the Dreamcast version or not. I think you did a video. Have you done a video on that?
I did do a video on that. I came to the conclusion that I kind of prefer the Dreamcast version because, one, I don't like the dub, but you can actually insert the Japanese voices into the Xbox version with a little hacking.
Oh, cool. So you can have Rio going you don't have Rio going, oh, and stuff like that.
The problem with Xbox is they use this really awful blur effect when you are engaged in combat. It's like a real simple, ugly looking blur, and I don't know why.
Dramatic and yeah.
Yeah, but it looks so bad, and it's like every time you get into a battle, it's just like the whole screen is a blur, and it's only during battle. It's fine otherwise, but it's a really weird choice that they made there. I don't know why they did it.
I tend to go to the Xbox version for convenience because I can just put it in a 360.
It's only one disc.
Yeah, and I've got the wireless 360 pad, and the mapping is a bit weird with the black and white, those weird little buttons that they put on the.
And I discovered though in that video then that when you play it on a 360, it's missing a lot of stuff, like all the shadows from the buildings are disabled on 360.
Yeah.
It's like that.
It's not good game breaking. It's kind of like I said about Outrun 2006. You can play that on a 360, and you have to sort of turn the audio off and back on again, and then it works. Right. Although I tried playing a Forza Motorsport 1, the original, and that is very difficult to play on a 360. The replays are just bits of the track slows down to a crawl. The frame rate.
It really came a long way though with that, because Forza 1 was a 30 frames per second racing game.
Yeah.
And obviously, when they got to 2 and up, it went to 60. But now you look at where they're at with like 7, and it's like, okay, it kind of looks better than Gran Turismo now.
but I still occasionally jump into the 4's my favorite. 4.
Oh yeah, 4 is awesome.
That still looks great.
It does, I agree.
It still looks really good. Those racing games will age very well, I think, because cars are a lot easier to make look real than a person or something, and yeah, obviously Saturn 6 that I've been playing in 4K on the PC looks absolutely stunning as well. They're good games to show off in 4K, weirdly enough, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
On the original Xbox, the game which I thought really shined was I want to say Project Gotham #2. That was to me, that was the Xbox racer. Forza was, people like that, but that's not for me.
Well, that was very late in the life of the Xbox. It was like 2005, the first Forza came out.
So but Project Gotham was, especially the second one, was an absolutely cracking game, and I played that a lot online, and that was just a generally really good sort of racing game, and that's sort of a series that, I love to see that come back, but I imagine the team's all sort of broken up now, and I think
the Dreamcast version was great. Metropolis
MSR
Racer, that was
MSR. That was great.
That was great. Yeah,
I think that was the first of those really trying to be mega. Well, there was Gran Turismo, but kind of giving it that coolness factor, like Need for Speed mixed with Gran Turismo.
Yeah, Bizarre Creations games are some of my favorite racers. Like
Definitely
all the PGR games, MSR, and even Blur.
Oh yeah, that was on the 360, wasn't it?
Those games are incredible, and PGR4 especially, I think, is the one that really sticks with me. Is like it was like the best that they got. It was so good.
Some of those ones are those slightly, not standard racing games. I really like Need for Speed Shift.
Yeah,
Need for Speed Shift 2.
Those are pretty cool.
They live on still in Project Cars because it's the same,
same guys.
studio, isn't it? But that cockpit view is like when you hit the side and everything would jiggle around and go into like a weird, like glitchy thing. That was awesome. But yeah, anyway, guys, I think we've gone on a bit longer than we probably were expecting.
It's a pretty long one.
It's been a bumper show. So thank you so much, John, for coming onto the show today. We really, really appreciate it. We're going to look forward to your next Digital Foundry DF Retro episode. And we're going to get that TFX one. We're going to get that TFX one going now. There's this long-lost PS1 version.
Well, that's the thing. Like, while we were recording the show, I bought a copy.
You bought it? So I've actually ruined your bank account with all these obscure Japanese PS1 games. You know what? It needs... No one... I said it's weird. I discovered it accidentally and no one's been talking about it. So you can put the word out on TFX on the PS1. But yeah... So yeah, we'll look forward to that. And but thank you very much again. Thanks, guys, for listening. Stu, where can you find us? Right, you can find us on our website, which is consoleshock.net. You can find us on Facebook if you search Console Shock, on YouTube if you search Console Shock, and we're on Stitcher as well, and iTunes. iTunes and Stitcher. We're on all of those platforms. All of these as well. Cool. Well, thanks for listening, guys, and we're going to see you in the next one. And that's bye from me. Bye-bye. Bye.